Hi there, this is Mich responding to your questions with my answers on the three-parter series focused on Harry. This will be an ongoing pattern where after 3 or so podcast episodes, I'll have one that answers any questions that you may have, so feel free to leave them as we go on. Your comments during this series were appreciated and welcomed. I know with everything happening in the world, taking the time to listen and then to comment is time that you spent with the Meghanpedia team. We don't take it for granted. And that brings me to addressing a commenter who said, after your first podcast, I said I would not listen again because I felt you talked down to your audience. Again, thank you for not only coming once, but returning again to share your feelings. I'm pretty matter of fact and have no audience type in mind when I make the podcast. At the beginning, when the idea of a podcast was suggested to me, I had no model of what the perfect listener would be or how I would go about getting his or her attention. A little bit about me. I'm 54 years old. I have adult children who live at home. I'm on the second career of my life. I'm introverted, however, not shy. I'm mostly unbothered, but capable of speaking my mind. I have a low tolerance for petty behavior and therefore keep my circle of friends close. So with those personality quirks, I'm now creating podcasts. When I decide on a subject like Harry, for instance, I want to talk about something that has some meat, not just what is in the news today or just about one headline. I ignore most of the nonsense anyway, unless something gets under my skin, and then I'm ready to go into stealth mode to zero in on what has got me hot and bothered. As I've said, I write my script. Sometimes I'm talking to the haters who I'm not expecting to be listening to this anyway. Sometimes I'm responding to a question that I've been mulling over in my mind. Sometimes I'm playing devil's advocate to make my point. So if what I'm saying feels personally targeted to you, then that's your projection that's coloring what's being said. A reaction that happens often in the world of social media, and I get it. Still, I won't be changing how I do what I do. So now about Harry in this series. What motivated me to talk about Harry? There were 3 factors that moved the subject into focus. I think 3 or 4. Of course, one was his upcoming birthday. Number 2, I was in the generation who was there for his birth, watched him grow up, warts and all, but then transform into this confident young man who defied the firm. He defied the low expectations and who had to come into his space. And third is wondering how much is nature versus nurture in our human development. Was he born with this stubborn determination that can be used for good or stupid choices, or was he born into a space that through its manipulations set him on a path with unintended consequences, like marrying a biracial divorcee and leaving the senior royal roadshow? And the answer is it's a bit of both, I believe. We see highly engaged mothers for both Harry and Meghan who supported their determined children. They loved them, but they also showed them how to care about others. The fourth reason comes by way of the Disney streaming service of the Broadway play Hamilton, which is now available. Now, I wasn't on board the Hamilton hype. Couldn't wrap my head around listening to rap for 2 hours because I didn't want to have to actively listen to figure out what was going on. Plus, I just got tired of those who saw it and not shutting up about it. But finally, I watched it, and now I became someone who won't shut up about it. So I have to laugh every time I start singing some of the choruses while I'm doing chores. But as with anything that I get obsessed with, I started doing research. And Lin-Manuel talked about how he only read the first chapter and immediately knew he had to write this play. And I felt the same way about Harry's life. I saw the 3 acts vividly in my mind. I think his life is so rich with history and the drama and the metaphors that I hope one day someone can do justice to its retelling. So the first episode was Harry born a prince. And I think just that statement alone deserves an exclamation point. According to their own rules about the monarchy, he is born a prince, period. There's no title to be stripped from him. He's in line to the throne. He's acknowledged that much. So again, nothing has changed on that point. He has a formal way to be addressed, regardless of whether they want him to use it or not. And when they're all standing in a room, he hasn't lost his place in line to someone like Eugenie or any of the other cousins. The royal hierarchy is still there. The other person heavily featured in this Harry series was his mother, Diana. And as I read through the various reports about her, I was doubly sure that not only did she impact Harry as a sensitive world citizen, but her unfinished legacy is his biggest motivation for what he's doing now. A commenter wrote, "There was mention of Diana's reputation and that they always bring up her lovers as though Charles only cheated with Camilla." And I say that women's virtue is easily weaponized against them to remove any validation to their accomplishments or cheapen every aspect of their life. Like her son, though, Diana matured and transformed to a public figure who found her footing. Someone else wrote, "This podcast clearly articulated the long, lonely, and painful journey of Princess Diana from a naive young lady into a power player that the British royal family had to reckon with towards the end. Harry is his mother's champion. He learned from the best to be with the best." And I feel that's a beautiful summation. I'd say that Diana shouldn't have married Charles. That's what I said in the podcast. And that sentiment comes from the fact that as we are today sitting at this high point, like as if we were in a stadium, looking down on all the moving bits, we can see the impact and the consequences of this union. When they first got together, I don't think I gave their age difference a second thought. I enjoyed the spectacle of this over-the-top wedding. I mean, even my wedding dress looks similar to Diana's, and that was in 1990s with the mutton sleeves and, the lots of material. But going through the research material for the podcast, I felt sad for her that she got tossed to the wolves at a vulnerable time of her life. But as someone wrote, and I hardly agree, as much as Diana should not have been married to Charles, the only great thing I can take away from this is Harry. Without Harry, we will not have Meghan, his beautiful wife, and without Meghan, we will not have cute Archie as their special and wonderful son. The second part of the series was Harry walking his own path. And the specter of death has been in Harry's life at an impressionable age. I don't believe that it's defined him, but it certainly taught him a humbling lesson about our mortality and that good people do have awful things happen to them. It's probably a time where faith or spirituality is born or tested. It's a time when you can stay in the land of regret or anger or guilt, or you fight your way out of the depression to breathe and continue living in the present and having optimism about the future. This is where my overall frustration with William increased because, although groomed to be the king and treated differently, Harry is still his only brother. He's been loyal, always been the wingman, always ready to be his number one cheerleader. I have a friend right now who suffered neck pain for several months. It got treated as a muscle strain. Finally, she got an x-ray and they immediately said cancer. So in late August, they removed the tumor from her neck, but diagnosed that it's not the primary source. And as of yesterday, she was told she only has a month to live because the cancer has metastasized throughout the body. So this calm voice that you all like, well, I think it's what's helping her husband through it. And I'm not a counselor, but just trying to be soothing and just listen. But I share that because life happens regardless of our best plans and intentions. And my buddy and I have had a beautiful 26 years of friendship. There's nothing to regret. There's no woulda, shoulda, coulda, because we never let stupid stuff affect our friendship. So as I said in the podcast, why waste time fighting over dumb nonsense? William's kingship is not at risk by Harry, and it's certainly not at risk by Meghan. regardless of whether Harry and Meghan are more popular, that doesn't matter either. The media will take care of William and Kate, just as his father did a PR campaign to make folks tolerate Camilla, and it worked, I guess. The media can be bought and manipulated to take care of William. And if there was a blowout fight over Meghan and Harry told William where to shove it, and I personally like that scenario, William can be the big brother and let it go, because again, what a waste of time. But as we move on to the third part of the podcast for Harry, Breaking Barriers for Love, there were two comments that I particularly want to highlight. The first is someone wrote, "Who taught him how to love? I contend Meg will have to do it if he will allow her. Di always said that family was cold and loveless." And I think that's a great question. Who taught him how to love? Who teaches us how to love? And how many tries do we go through before we get it right? Because love takes work, takes compromise, takes determination, and they won't always be on the same accord, and that's not as scary as it sounds. Yet I think what they have faced together and the way they seem to be hitting their stride and jumping the hurdles, they're teaching each other how to love and be loved. And the other commenter wrote a beautiful thing about Harry. "You are amazing simply for hanging in there and holding on, no matter how hard things are. You kept moving forward no matter how scared you were or how anxious you felt. Peace is the beauty of life. It is sunshine, the trumpet of truth. You are like a diamond, resilient, strong, and exquisite. Harry, you are like your mother. Your kindness has a beautiful way of reaching down into a weary heart and making it shine like the rising sun." And on that note, thank you for stopping by. Mich signing out.